Kim Kardashian, the billionaire reality television icon whose name has become synonymous with modern celebrity culture, found herself at the center of a controversy far removed from fashion campaigns and red carpet appearances. Instead of headlines celebrating business milestones or cultural influence, she was confronted with a lawsuit filed by individuals who say they once worked for her. The allegations outlined in that complaint are not minor misunderstandings or workplace disagreements. They are claims of unpaid wages, denied overtime, missed meal and rest breaks, and perhaps most unsettling of all, the alleged overworking of a 16-year-old beyond what California labor law permits. For years, the Kardashian brand has projected an image of discipline, ambition, and relentless work ethic. The family's rise from reality television stars to billion-dollar entrepreneurs is often framed as a story of hustle and strategic brilliance. But what happens when the narrative shifts from how hard the celebrities work to how the people working for them are treated? To understand why these allegations struck such a nerve, it's important to grasp the scale of the Kardashian operation. This is not simply a wealthy household with a housekeeper and an assistant. It is a complex, high-functioning ecosystem that depends on dozens of employees to sustain its pace and polish. There are nannies entrusted with raising children in the absence of parents constantly traveling or filming. Personal assistants manage schedules that span business ventures, media appearances, legal studies, product launches, and global events. Maintenance crews preserve multi-million-dollar properties that must remain pristine at all times. Security teams safeguard privacy and safety in a world where public exposure is constant. Stylists, glam teams, drivers, chefs, landscapers, the list goes on. Each of these roles contributes to the illusion of effortlessness. The public sees curated photos, immaculate homes, flawless beauty, and perfectly timed appearances. What they do not see are the early mornings, the late nights, the constant coordination, and the human labor that makes that image possible. According to several former employees, that labor came at a cost. The 2021 lawsuit marked a turning point. It transformed private grievances into public record. 7 former workers, identified as gardeners and maintenance staff, alleged that while working at Kim's Hidden Hills property, they were not properly compensated. They claimed wages were delayed or incomplete, overtime was not paid, and legally required meal and rest breaks were denied. They further alleged that despite functioning as full-time employees, they were paid as independent contractors, a classification that can significantly reduce benefits, protections, and employer obligations. That distinction is critical. Independent contractors are not entitled to the same labor safeguards as employees. By labeling someone as a contractor, a company, or in this case, an employer, can limit liability for overtime, benefits, and certain tax obligations. The lawsuit suggested that the workers' duties and schedules more closely resembled traditional employment than independent freelance work, raising questions about misclassification. The complaint also included allegations that the workers did not receive proper pay stubs or itemized wage statements. Without clear documentation, tracking hours worked and wages owed becomes extraordinarily difficult. When there is no transparent system for recording labor, disputes over compensation become nearly impossible to resolve informally. The absence of consistent pay schedules, as alleged, only deepened that uncertainty. Perhaps the most explosive element of the lawsuit involved the claim that approximately 10% of wages were withheld for taxes but not properly reported. If true, this would not merely be an administrative oversight. It would represent a serious legal violation. One worker alleged that when he raised questions about these deductions, he was terminated immediately. The implication is chilling. Speaking up may have cost him his job. Even more disturbing was the allegation that the worker's 16-year-old son was employed and required to work beyond the legal limits imposed to protect minors. Labor laws exist to prevent exploitation, particularly of young workers who may lack the experience or leverage to advocate for themselves. If those boundaries were crossed, the ethical implications extend beyond payroll disputes. They reach into the realm of child labor protections. Kim Kardashian's representatives responded by stating that the workers were hired and supervised by a third-party vendor responsible for managing employment arrangements. According to that response, Kim was not directly involved in overseeing payroll practices and had consistently paid the vendor for services rendered. From a legal standpoint, that distinction matters. If an external company handled the employment logistics, liability may rest there. but public perception does not always follow legal technicalities. To many observers, the central question remains: when you are the owner of the property, the beneficiary of the labor, and the person at the top of the hierarchy, how much responsibility do you bear for ensuring ethical treatment? The lawsuit did more than raise legal questions. It triggered broader conversations about power and accountability in celebrity culture. Wealth on the scale of billions creates a dramatic imbalance between employer and worker. When one side has access to elite legal teams, public relations experts, and immense financial resources, and the other side consists of hourly laborers, the playing field is anything but level. Filing a lawsuit under those circumstances is not a casual decision. It is often a last resort. Beyond the legal claims, other former staff members have described an environment of intense pressure and rigid expectations. In interviews and anecdotes that have circulated publicly, employees have spoken about strict aesthetic standards, precise coordination, and little tolerance for error. Even seemingly minor details, such as color palettes worn by staff, have been discussed as part of maintaining a controlled visual environment. On its own, that might appear eccentric but harmless. Yet when layered on top of allegations of underpayment and overwork, it can feel emblematic of a workplace where image outweighs comfort. The irony is difficult to ignore. Kim Kardashian's empire is built on branding herself as a savvy entrepreneur and disciplined professional. She has publicly championed hard work, resilience, and even legal reform efforts. But the treatment of workers behind the scenes, if the allegations hold weight, complicates that narrative. The question becomes whether the standards of excellence demanded publicly are equally upheld privately. This controversy also exposes a broader cultural paradox. Celebrity culture often glorifies excess while obscuring the labor that sustains it. Mansions do not maintain themselves. Glamorous appearances do not assemble themselves. Schedules do not coordinate themselves. The lifestyle celebrated on social media is the product of countless hours of unseen effort by people whose names rarely appear in headlines. When those individuals claim they were underpaid, denied breaks, or silenced for raising concerns, the story shifts from spectacle to ethics. It becomes less about celebrity drama and more about workplace fairness. Regardless of one's opinion of Kim Kardashian as a public figure, the allegations prompt an uncomfortable but necessary question. How should immense power be exercised over those with far less of it? At the heart of this controversy are real human beings, workers with families, bills, and responsibilities. They are not characters in a reality show. They are not plot devices in a media narrative. They are individuals who allege that their labor was not respected in accordance with the law. And when such claims surface, they force a reckoning not only for the celebrity involved, but for an industry built on image management. Whether the courts ultimately validate or dismiss the allegations, the conversation they sparked will likely endure. Because once the curtain is pulled back, even slightly, it becomes harder to ignore what might be happening behind it. Kim's response, delivered through her representatives, was clear and carefully framed. She was not the direct employer. According to that statement, the workers in question had been hired, managed, and paid through a third-party vendor responsible for overseeing maintenance services. Any payroll errors, labor violations, or classification issues, her team argued, would fall under that vendor's authority, not hers. In essence, the message was that she was not aware of the alleged misconduct, and therefore could not be held personally accountable for it. Legally, that distinction may carry weight. Structuring employment through outside vendors is common in high-net-worth households and large business operations. It creates layers of separation, administrative, financial, and legal. But outside the courtroom, the explanation left many observers unsettled. Because while liability can be outsourced on paper, the benefits of the labor still flow upward. The mansion was hers. The property being maintained was hers. The lifestyle supported by that work was hers. And that is where the larger question began to echo. If the lawsuit had never been filed, would those workers have ever been heard? If no formal complaint had been submitted, if no attorneys had stepped in, if no media outlets had picked up the story, would anything have changed? Or would the imbalance of power have quietly silenced the issue? When one side of a dispute holds enormous wealth, influence, and public reach, and the other consists of hourly workers dependent on a paycheck, the stakes are dramatically uneven. Filing a lawsuit against someone at Kim Kardashian's level is not a casual decision. It is not a small risk. It can carry professional consequences and personal strain. So when workers choose to step into that arena, many people assume they must feel they have no other option left. Beyond the legal filings, former employees and observers have pointed to what they describe as a broader culture of control, one that extends beyond payroll disputes and into daily expectations. One frequently cited example is Kim openly discussing her preference for neutral, coordinated color palettes among her staff. She has referenced aesthetic guidelines, even mentioning what some interpreted as a kind of internal handbook, outlining preferred tones. Grays, creams, blacks, khakis, colors that visually blend into her minimalist environment. On the surface, this might seem harmless. Celebrities are known for strict aesthetic standards, but critics argue that this detail symbolizes something deeper. It suggests an environment where image reigns supreme, where even the presence of employees must serve the visual narrative of the brand. Staff are not merely workers, they are background elements in a carefully curated frame. Former staff members have described this environment as intensely pressurized. According to those accounts, expectations are high, tolerance for error is low, and the margin for human imperfection is narrow. In such a setting, a mistake is not treated as a learning moment, it is treated as a liability. The perception that a single misstep could result in immediate termination creates an atmosphere defined less by professionalism and more by fear. When workers operate under the constant threat of being replaced, creativity, communication, and even basic comfort can erode. Then there are the moments that unfolded publicly, instances caught on camera that critics argue reveal how power dynamics play out in real time. One widely discussed incident occurred at the Met Gala, when a security guard accidentally stepped on the train of Kim's dress. It was a chaotic environment, crowded, fast-moving, tightly choreographed. Accidents are almost inevitable in such settings, but viewers who watched the footage felt her reaction was sharp and unforgiving. To them, it appeared as though frustration eclipsed empathy. The moment was brief but powerful, a reminder of how quickly composure can shift when perfection is disrupted. Another incident that sparked conversation happened on a red carpet when an assistant attempted to help adjust her look and was waved off. Again, the action itself lasted only seconds, yet body language communicates volumes. Critics interpreted the gesture as dismissive, even demeaning. The issue was not whether help was declined, it was how it was declined. A quiet "thank you" would have sufficed. Instead, many viewers felt the interaction reinforced a hierarchy, in which staff are present but not fully acknowledged. In isolation, each of these moments could be dismissed as stress, exhaustion, or misinterpretation. But when placed alongside allegations of underpayment and high-pressure expectations, they begin to form a pattern in the public imagination. A pattern suggesting that workers exist primarily as functional tools rather than respected professionals. The story involving longtime makeup artist Joyce Benally intensified that perception. Joyce was not a peripheral contractor. She was a trusted insider, present during pivotal milestones, deeply woven into the Kardashian inner circle for years. Her proximity to the family suggested loyalty, intimacy, and shared success. So when she suddenly stopped working with Kim, and when Kim reportedly unfollowed her on social media, the abruptness raised eyebrows. In celebrity culture, social media gestures often signal deeper fractures. Observers speculated about what could have caused such a break. Some believed it may have centered on compensation and valuation, that even years of dedication might not guarantee fair pay or long-term security. Others suggested it could have involved independence and competition, particularly as Joyce pursued her own beauty ventures while Kim and Kylie dominated that industry. In a business landscape where brand control is paramount, autonomy from a former employee can shift dynamics. Regardless of the precise cause, the separation fed a narrative that relationships within that world may be transactional. When alignment shifts, whether financially, strategically, or personally, the connection can dissolve quickly. Loyalty, critics argue, may have limits when weighed against brand strategy. Taken together, the legal dispute, the aesthetic control, the public interactions, the professional fallout, these elements paint a portrait that is far more complex than the polished image projected on magazine covers. They suggest a workplace ecosystem where perfection is prioritized, authority is centralized, and power imbalanced. CES are difficult to ignore. Whether those perceptions are entirely fair or partially exaggerated remains a matter of debate, but the fact that they persist speaks to a broader cultural tension. In a world that celebrates billionaire success stories, scrutiny inevitably follows. And when that scrutiny centers on how those at the top treat those below them, it transforms from gossip into something more consequential. A question of ethics, leadership, and accountability. When you step back and look at the full picture, the lawsuit allegations, the repeated claims from former employees, the reported absence of proper pay documentation, the accounts of high-pressure demands and sudden terminations, and the public moments that many interpreted as dismissive, it becomes increasingly difficult to frame it all as coincidence. One isolated complaint might be easy to brush aside. Two could be called misunderstandings. But when similar themes resurface across different roles, different years, and different contexts, they begin to form a narrative that feels less accidental and more structural. The same patterns appear again and again: allegations of underpayment, overwork, rigid control, and a sense that employees are replaceable rather than valued. Whether every claim is accurate or not, the repetition itself is what gives the story weight. Patterns shape perception. And perception, especially in the age of digital scrutiny, is powerful. Perhaps the most striking irony in all of this is that Kim's empire does not function in isolation. It runs because of staff. The luxury, the precision, the seamless branding, it all rests on a network of people who wake up early, stay late, solve problems quietly, and keep the machinery running smoothly. These workers are not optional accessories to wealth. They are the infrastructure beneath it. If they all stepped away at once, if the nannies stopped showing up, if the assistants stopped coordinating, if the maintenance teams stopped maintaining, if security and glam teams vanished, the illusion of effortless control would fracture almost instantly. The perfectly timed appearances would falter. The daily rhythm would collapse. The brand would still exist, but the operational engine beneath it would stall. That reality makes the allegations more unsettling, because it forces us to confront how dependent power is on those with far less of it. Kim Kardashian has cultivated a global image as a sharp, disciplined entrepreneur, someone who transformed notoriety into lasting influence. She is widely regarded as a master of branding, a figure who understands leverage, negotiation, and public positioning better than most. But leadership is measured not only by profits or headlines. It is measured by how power is exercised when no one is watching. The way someone treats those who cannot amplify their own voice, the assistants, the maintenance workers, the service staff, often reveals more than any polished interview ever could. Employees are not props in a luxury narrative. They are people with rent due, children to care for, aging parents to support, and futures to protect. Their labor sustains the comfort and visibility of those above them. If even a fraction of these allegations proves to be true, the conversation shifts away from celebrity gossip and toward something much more fundamental: accountability. It becomes about what happens when wealth and influence create such a dramatic imbalance that fairness must be fought for publicly. It becomes about how difficult it can be for someone with limited resources to challenge someone with vast ones. And it becomes about the uncomfortable reality that, in some cases, justice only enters the room when it is forced in through legal action or media exposure. This is not just a story about one celebrity. It is a reflection of a broader dynamic within celebrity culture itself. Fame can distort boundaries. Wealth can create distance from consequence. Carefully managed public relations can soften reputations even when private tensions simmer beneath the surface. The question is whether genuine accountability can coexist with immense power, or whether image management simply becomes more sophisticated over time. So what does this ultimately say about Kim's behavior? That depends on how one interprets the pattern. Some may believe the allegations represent a systemic issue rooted in control and perfectionism. Others may see exaggeration, resentment, or mismanagement by third parties rather than intentional wrongdoing. And some may argue that any high-pressure environment at that level will inevitably produce dissatisfaction. But the larger cultural question lingers. When someone reaches a certain level of wealth and influence, do they truly evolve in response to criticism? Or do they simply refine the mechanisms that protect their public image? That question extends beyond one individual. It challenges how society views power, how it evaluates leadership, and how it defines success. Because in the end, legacy is shaped not only by